Pete, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Thanks for coming back on.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. It's been fun this year.
It has. And, I wanted to do, I guess it's becoming more of a theme. And this is with Tom Luongo. I said, because we talked about movies, Tom and I, and you and I have touched on movies. And I'm like, we can put the Armageddon and all that stuff on, we'll have plenty of time to revisit nuclear war and what happens in 25 with the administration and, on and on and on. Let's lighten it up for a conversation and just talk
Sure,
about
why
that,
not?
talk about movies and, I don't know. Like, it doesn't have to be. People always say doom, doom. But here's what's funny with Tom's episode. Some people are like, oh, this is great. Like, so cool, you guys. And other people are like, you should have put in the description that it was movie talk so we don't have to waste our time. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, it's in the description. I just didn't announce it before we started that we're going to talk about movies.
Yeah, people don't want to read. What are you talking about?
So I don't know about you, man. I have these like movies this time of year. It's a little bit of downtime, and some movies I can hang on to from my childhood, and other movies you put on, you're like, oh man, 5 minutes of this, I can't do it. Like even Christmas Story, I watched 20 minutes of it last night. I love that movie, but I don't know, I can't get through it anymore. Vacation, I didn't watch. Christmas Vacation, I didn't watch. Home Alone, I've seen it so many times that yeah. You feel the same?
Well, I mean, I didn't watch Christmas Story last year, I always like watch. I think one channel does it like 24 hours in a row. So I watch it like one time a year, and last year I didn't do it, and this year I didn't even see any of it. We did watch because we were over. I was over at my in-laws. We watched a good significant portion of Christmas Vacation, which I hadn't seen in years, so it was nice seeing that. And also a good portion of Home Alone. And Home Alone just to me doesn't stand up. It's just too corny, it's too cheesy, and it's just too, yeah, I just don't, yeah, there's nothing there for me.
I mean, how could you? I know it's a kid's movie, but it's like he's got all this time to prep for these robbers to come here. He could have just ran to the cop station. He runs to the store. He runs to the church. Like, I don't know.
He's the villain of the show. He's the villain of the movie. I mean, he's a little nudnik. I mean, he's like, I mean, just why would you want, come on, come on.
I think my.
And
Oh, God.
you could tell in the interaction with the cashier, when he's just a rude little shit. I mean,
Well, and I think my fondest memory of that movie is I remember going to the theater to see it. I was in seventh grade, and that was a big deal for your parents to drop you off. We had our Z
mm,
Cavaricis on, and we went to the mall back when it was still cool just to go to the mall. And we couldn't wear your Raider starter jacket in the mall, like, especially in Cleveland. You were like, if you did that, people would try to steal it from you. And going to see that movie in the theater.
yeah, no, it was they're good movies. You can watch them with people can watch them with young kids. I mean, Christmas Vacation, there's a couple parts in that are kind of tough to watch with the kids because he does drop a couple F bombs in there, and there is some very adult humor. But as far as A Christmas Story goes, and as far as Home Alone, I mean, Home Alone has a lot of violence. So if you want to, keep your kid away from watching violence, you'll have to. But then again, so does A Christmas Story. But the violence in A Christmas Story is, you're beating up the bully. So I guess it's good violence.
So, so there was a movie on last night. I'm embarrassed to even say this. Well, although I didn't get all the way through it, but when I was a kid, it was cool. It was a movie called The Santa Claus, not the Tim Allen one, but it was the Santa Claus. It had Dudley Moore was his top elf, and John Lithgow. Do you remember that at all?
I didn't watch it, but I know which one you're talking
Oh
about.
my
Yeah,
god, I had it on for like
drunk, I
ten
mean,
minutes. It was terrible.
little drunk British guy. That's what you want in a movie.
But another Christmas, Die Hard. I've heard that Lethal Weapon. A friend of mine pointed out, he's like, when you rewatch Lethal Weapon, that movie's bad. I still like it though.
I mean, it's just an action movie. You take those movies as action movies. I mean, that's all you're supposed to do. It's like I know you and Longo were talking about like the First Blood movies, and the first movie, was really good. There was a good and apparently there's a Christmas tree in the background, so that's a Christmas movie too. Um, but I mean, it's just a good movie and it's a good story. and then after that you just basically it becomes action movies. Rambo 3 was actually like propaganda, was State Department propaganda. At the ending, it thanks the the brave fighters of the Mujahideen and everything like that. Now they've changed it. They've changed it in later cuts and everything. But it was just basically State Department propaganda. And there was a lot of that in the 80s, though. I mean, what was Rocky 3? Or what was it? It was Rocky 4, the one where he fought Drago?
Yeah, it was fourth one. Third one was Mr. T.
Yeah, the third one was Mr. Yeah, I mean, what was that but just Cold War propaganda? I mean, it was, I mean, everything to the steroids to him having to fight in Russia. I mean, it was just awful stuff. But you watch it because it's friggin' remove your brain entertainment. Yeah, yeah. I mean, there are a lot of movies that I like that are cerebral, but sometimes I just want to put something on and just enjoy it. It's like it's like the James Bond movies or like the Mission Impossible movies. I don't I don't want to use my brain a lot. I just want to I want to enjoy it.
I only got through the first two Mission Impossibles, but I think it was Tom and other people said they get better the more it
Oh
goes.
yeah. Oh, the one right now that we're waiting for waiting to come out, part 2 to come out. I think it's Ghost Protocol. That is, I mean, like a heavy take on AI, on like what AI could become and everything. So, they're waiting for part 2 of that to come out. But yeah, I mean, they do get better. I think they are. First one was good. Second one was god awful. The third one was good, and they get progressively get better after that because they're concentrating more on story, and also the characters are a little more interesting. And the more you get to know characters, the the more invested you can be in it. As long as the characters stay likable, and don't. I mean, they haven't really gone woke. I'm sure somebody listening to this and go, no, no, in Mission Impossible 5, I don't care. But it's not something that is so blatant. It's like Robert Pattinson's The Batman. There are two spots in it that they make. There's two like distinctly woke comments, but I was waiting for so much more. Um, but they just put it into everything now. So
Did you like the Batman with Robert Pattinson?
yeah, I actually did. I thought it was pretty decent. I haven't seen the new Penguin movie, and I'm not going to see the second Joker movie. I know that that's probably makes me a normie because I know some people have been like, no, there are certain nuances. No, I'm good. I'm good. I don't. If I want to watch a musical, I'll watch something old. I'm not going to watch stupid superhero musical. No, there's no nuances to it, no matter what you think. There's nothing brilliant about it, no matter what you think.
I wanted. I was gonna go. People get bored of me retelling the story, but my buddy and I have a friend that he's a couple years older than me, and we just go to the movies. Like he loves to go to the movies, I love to go to the movies. There's just nothing out there to see anymore. And I said, let's go see the Joker. He doesn't care. I'm one of those people. I listen to the Critical Drinker on YouTube. If you ever watch that guy's channel, he's great. When I was a kid, I loved Siskel and Ebert. That was like my kind of go-to for movie reviews. Well, it was everybody's go-to. But I'm like, let's just go. I won't read any reviews. I won't watch anything, and just to get out and do something. And I made the mistake for Joker too, and I still just haven't seen anything good about it. And I have not met one person that's watched it in my life.
No, no, I heard Tim Dillon was talking about it, and he was in it, and he said, "Yeah, I don't recommend anyone go see that movie." So
Really?
that's all I needed to hear. Yeah, it was like it's just god awful. So yeah, I don't. You know, if there are good movies being made right now, someone has to tell me about them. And I mean, I can't even really think about a movie that someone's told me to watch outside of like the Mission Impossible movies or something like that in the last few years. That's been made in like the last 4 or 5 years. Now, mind you, I'm spend more of my time reading and researching than anything else. So I don't give myself a lot of downtime. But when I do have downtime, I just spend it with my wife, and we watch cooking shows from Britain or something like that to see how god awful their food is. No, just kidding. Some of it's very nice.
Did you see Godzilla minus one?
I didn't see that. No, is it good?
I got it. All right. I want you to watch it now because I'm what am I 2 for 3 of recommending that to people, and some people like Colin was like bad, bad, bad as a bad one on my. He's like wife didn't like it either. I thought the movie was great because it was different because it wasn't centered around Godzilla. Do you know anything about it?
Mm-mm.
It's subtitled. It took place, so it's Japanese subtitled, and it takes place right after World War II. And the premise of it is this kamikaze pilot gets cold feet and decides not to carry out his mission, so he diverts to part of the island in Japan. Godzilla hits the island. I'm not ruining the movie for you. Godzilla hits the island, and he hides. Godzilla goes away. The nukes get dropped. The war's over. Godzilla gets stronger, and he starts heading back to the island. The United States government sees this, and they say, well, screw it. Let Japan deal with this. It's not our problem. So the pilot throughout the whole movie is dealing with his guilt and shame because he did not, he ran away.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But I got to tell you, it's really, really good. Like, and there's more to it than that. But they develop the character, the guilt that he has. It's centered around that. And there's a woman,
Okay.
and there's
Yeah.
a baby, and
Well,
there's.
don't tell me no more. Don't tell me no more. I'll watch it. Yeah.
I was watching the part. There's a scene, not to tell you the scene, but there's a scene where I'm like, so into this movie. I'm like, I cannot believe. I went and saw it in the theater. They put it back in the theater, and I was like laughing. I'm like, I can't believe I'm not into Godzilla. Like that's just not my thing. And it was so good. But now you're gonna watch it and you're gonna hate
No,
it.
I'll check it out. No, I'll check it out. I recently the Old Glory Club. You know, we do movie reviews every once in a while, and I haven't even been in on one. Thomas and I do private movie reviews that we put on Gumroad. We're actually getting ready to do our next movie tomorrow, which I think will definitely be our biggest seller, but we'll see. But they did a review of Sicario, and I had seen Sicario when it first came out, but when it first came out, I was like in a real apolitical mode. I really wasn't paying attention to a lot. Uh, after like the two during the Obama years, I purposely just ignored politics because I knew how bad things were gonna be. But when Trump decided to step into the ring and it was going to be him and Hillary, that's when I started paying attention to politics again. So like when Sicario came out, I didn't really think about the political implications to it. And then so the guys reviewed it, and then I watched it again, and then I watched it again, and I've watched it like 3 times in like the last 3 weeks, you know, in the last month, and I'm like, this is an amazing, amazing movie. It basically speaks to the most important thing that we're dealing with today, immigration, with the cartels. It basically is saying that there's a very implicit message or almost explicit message that a woman should not be in law enforcement. And it goes to show what like, you know, real heritage Americans can get accomplished if they want to, that you could actually stop all this bull. But it also shows that when it comes to politics and when it comes to international intrigue, you may have to go with the devil you know sometimes.
I love that movie. I'm glad you brought that movie up. I've been trying to get my sister to watch it like forever, and she won't.
It's a hard movie for women to watch, though. I mean, I wouldn't even let my wife watch like the opening scene of it because I know it'll affect her mood, and you know she just doesn't like. I've gotten to the point where I don't really like movies with a lot of violence and also a lot of just people who have no concept of humanity when you're dealing with people like that. So I went and watched it again just because I think it's politically charged. And then I watched part two, and I'm like, damn, part two is really good too. Shit, you know.
Part two is very, very good.
Yeah,
You know,
that ending scene, that the whole you could do a 2 hour discussion just on the final scene of the movie when he closes that door. and he sees that, and the kid sees him, and he closes the door, and he says, you're going to work for me now. And it's like you're just like the implications of of the things going on in that movie are just they're astounding.
So go back to the first one, and then we'll come back to this. Go to the second
Sure.
one. But the end of the first one, to me, when Benicio del Toro, and I love Benicio del Toro, man. I mean, Usual Suspects is one of my all-time favorite movies. I don't know if you've probably seen that.
Of
Usual
course,
Suspects,
yeah,
yeah.
many. Yeah, well, I mean, it's one of those movies that you really only have to see once, but you do watch it again, even though
But when that scene with Emily Blunt at the end, when he makes her sign off on that agreement, he puts a gun under her, and then he says, and I couldn't hear the dialogue. I finally had to Google it because I couldn't make out what he was saying. But he says something along the lines of, "You should move to a small town where the rule of
yes,
law still exists. This is the land. You're not a wolf, and this is the land of wolves now." And then he takes apart her Glock, throws it, and then she puts it together and comes back out on the balcony and points it at him. And he turns around and looks at her, and she doesn't do it. And I was like, man, it feels like this is the world we're in now, where
Mhm.
certain parts of the country, the rule of law doesn't exist, and you have to
No,
become this land of wolf. You are wolf.
yeah, no, it's yeah, the hard part of that movie obviously is the hardest part of that movie is the final scene when he confronts the mob boss at the dinner table. Because you know what he's going to do. You just there's a part of you that doesn't want him to do it, because you're human, and but you also didn't go through what he went through. But yeah, that last scene, and I heard you and Tom talking about Dark Knight and how Dark Knight was, it was like Christopher Nolan was trying to tell us what was coming, and that we were coming to lawlessness, and it and really what it comes down to is like in Dark Knight, it's like, okay, so why is he able to get away with a lot of the things he's able to get away with? Why are the mobsters? Because all the cops are paid off. Right? I'm not saying all the cops are paid off now, but basically cops are not they're told not to do their jobs. And then you have DAs that are you don't know you don't know what kind of DA you're going to get. And it really was, when you look at it from that aspect, when you look back at Dark Knight or you look at Sicario, what he's saying at the ending is, yeah, we're coming to the point where Thomas talks about how, it's Thomas 777, he talks about how the early 90s and even into the mid 90s was lawlessness. Like if you lived in a city, like you knew people who, like I knew people who were like ODing, like dying. I knew people who were killing themselves because of pills and stuff like that. And there was a certain kind of lawlessness on the streets that like Giuliani stepped in and put a cop on every corner to try and stop in New York City, places like that. But where I was living in South Florida, it hadn't achieved that yet, and there was still a lot of weird stuff going on. But it's like that. It almost feels like we can get to that point very quickly, um, and by times five. Now, if something doesn't happen, and I'm not saying that Trump's going to solve everything. I don't know what he's going to solve. I think it's all on us at this point. Um, I think local politics is more important than anything, and finding your own people and having a support system. But yeah, I mean, we can get to the point real quick where that is the default, and the person who would stand, Batman. If a Batman rose up, like you'd be like Daniel Penny. As soon as they catch you, they're gonna want to hang you. So it seems to me that some people either are benefiting from, impending chaos and chaos in certain places, or they see that as some kind of strategy for the future in which they thrive and that they benefit by it.
Well, and that's what critics were judging the third Dark Knight Rises, and that's what I saw the beauty in that film, because you saw society break down in that. Yeah, there were holes. Okay, yeah, he's in a cave with a closed circuit TV that he's watching Gotham because his back is broken. And then the cops are in underground for, what was it, 3 months or 9 months, and then they get out, and the next day they're arresting everybody. I mean, there was definitely flaws in the script, but the premise
But
of it.
there was also a scene in which the criminals are judging the corrupt politicians. And you're like, hmm, who who could bring about who are we going to get order under? I mean, there are a bunch of questions about that movie where they're basically sentencing all of these corrupt politicians and police and everything to death. They take over, and what happens? I mean, it was almost like it was a message. It was almost like a message of, you might be better off with these people having criminals. I mean, outright open criminals. I used to say this when I was a libertarian. I used to say, if I had the choice to live in like a neighborhood that was run by like the local DA who's paid off and the cops who are just waiting for a pension, or to live in a mob neighborhood in New York, you're much safer living in a mob neighborhood in New York, or a neighborhood where I remember seeing a documentary back in when I was a kid. I think it was in the early 80s, where they were talking about how the Hells Angels actually had a clubhouse in Manhattan in Alphabet City. I'm not sure if it was in Alphabet City or right outside, but it was in that area, the section. And they were interviewing like this. They interviewed this old lady who, they asked her, said, "What is it like having the Hells Angels live by you?" She goes, "Well, if we have any problems in the neighborhood, we go to them before we go to the police." So, that whole Dark Knight Rises thing where it's like, okay, who's taking over, and they're judging the people who are in charge. It's like, what there's a huge, I think there's a is as huge a statement in that whole scene as there is that Nolan's making as huge a statement in that whole scene as he does in Dark Knight, where you're like, oh, they can just walk into a party with the richest people in a city and basically take over.
Well, then you look at that's one of my favorite trilogies. Those three movies, because this first one I thought was great
Oh, the
too.
first movie's amazing. The
Yeah,
first movie is so underrated. So, I mean, Raja Ghul,
I
I mean,
agree. I
he makes complete sense. I mean, when he's talking and he's like, civilizations just have to be burnt. I'm like, yes, they almost absolutely have to.
and I forgot what his exact words were in that, but it was like, when he didn't say judgment, but it was something like along the like reset, start over, and that's where Bane came in to carry it out in the third one. But that was the premise of that whole trilogy, and it was like, because this is where we're at, and yet people still think. I mean, if you shave off 50 million off the government the deficit, that's going to do anything. We're past all that. I'm sorry. We're just past all that.
And Nolan, like, especially if you watch Dark Knight. Okay, so the opening scene, him standing on the corner waiting to be picked up. The music, that crescendo, that build where it like builds to an absolute chaos. I mean, he's not only telling you the story in words and in pictures and in deed, he's telling you the story in music. Just watch Dark Knight for the music. You will be absolutely floored at how perfect the music is, and how the music is pretty much it is chaos right from the start. It's I mean, that trilogy really is like one of the greatest things I've ever seen. I think I saw Dark Knight in the theater like two or three times.
Yeah, me
I
too.
definitely saw it two times. Yeah.
Well, and even when Morgan Freeman, when Christian Bale's able to figure out the sonic with the sonogram so he could track the whole city is under surveillance, and then he tells Morgan Freeman, just type in your name and it'll blow up. If this was real world, they would never give up that power.
No, no. I mean, okay. So, I mean, where was that? When was that made? A couple years after Palantir came into existence?
It was '08 that
And it
movie
was,
came out, right? '08.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And Palantir was already in existence, right? Yeah. Wonder where he got the idea for that.
And how about the end when Gary Oldman says to his son, he's not the hero. He's not the hero we need right now. But I mean, just God, that movie. That's a perfect movie.
Yeah, I mean, sometime he's going to have to become the villain. It's yeah, the and then of course, the making the choice where basically he say, "Oh, you make the choice," and he's like, "I'm going to go after Rachel," and everything like that. And then it turns out that he's not. And I interpreted that to be no matter what choice you make when it comes to like elite power, they're still going to pretty much get what they want. You may be able to influence it, but they're going to get what they want.
Yeah, and I really wanted him to do this next Bond movie, man. And he just announced he's doing the Odyssey, Nolan's next film. I just would have loved, and that's what Tom Luongo and I were talking about. I would have loved to see what he would have done with vintage. I love James Bond. Although if you listened, the Connery ones, I only saw Never Say Never Again.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know that my buddies in the old Glory Club will get on me for saying this, but I mean, I think Daniel Craig is just so perfect because I mean, I grew up with Roger Moore,
Me too.
and Roger Moore just I don't care how many women were around, he just seemed gay. He seemed effeminate. Dalton was good, Dalton was good, and but and Connery. I mean, but Connery was after my time, and I've really never gone back and searched out the Sean Connery. Thomas and I just did a review of Highlander, but Sean Connery's in that for what 10 minutes, 15 minutes. So it's yeah, but most people don't realize that because his name's on it, and it's like, oh well, he's only in there for like 15 minutes. So.
Did you see him in Never Say Never Again?
I did not.
Oh, so
I don't if I've seen any Sean Connery 007s, it was when I was a kid, and I just don't remember them.
So the only reason why I saw that, as a kid, we had cable, so we had HBO, Cinemax, and whatnot, and Showtime and the Movie Channel. We only had 4 channels back then. And Sean Connery, because he always said he would never play Bond when he left, but he reprised his role for Never Say Never Again, and they released it the same year as Octopussy. So they used a lot of the same character names, but it wasn't under the Bond umbrella for whatever. They had the screen rights to this script. But I watched it because Octopussy, they were both on cable at the same time. And Kim Basinger was the Bond girl in Never Say Never Again.
Right.
Which, I mean, who didn't? I love Kim Basinger.
Yeah, at that time, yeah.
And that was the guy that directed that he didn't do Return of the Jedi, was Aaron Kershner. So he did Empire Strikes Back, and then he moved over to Never Say Never Again.
Yeah. Oh, we're going to talk about Star Wars now?
Well, no, I was just going to say, what about Pierce Brosnan Bond?
Brosnan was good. Yeah, and some of the stuff he's done later on, roles he's been in, been pretty decent. Yeah, the stuff that came out in the 90s, I really didn't watch an insane amount of TV or movies in the 90s, so I've had to play catch up with that. It's like I didn't see the prequels, the Star Wars prequels, until like years after because I just wasn't watching movies at that time. I was working really hard, and I had projects all over the place. But yeah, it wasn't really until Daniel Craig came along that I started watching Bond again. So that's probably why I like them more. If I went back and I watched, I mean, like I've seen, a Bond movie I've seen more than any. And it's just because it was like my mom's favorite. It was the George Lazenby on Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Never saw it.
It's so good.
Is it?
It's so good. Yeah, it's depressing and it's really good. Yeah, it's really good. He was a good Bond. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I've heard Nolan talk about it because Nolan said that Lazenby and Timothy Dalton were his 2 favorites.
Yeah, Lazenby was something. But yeah. So once Craig took over, I was in a movie mode where I was watching a lot of movies, and yeah, I just watched them all. I've watched every one that he's been in. So.
Yeah, I didn't see the last one. What was it? Nothing to Die For, or whatever the last one was that he did.
The last one he did, I can't remember.
Yeah,
can't remember right off the top of my head.
Skyfall, I thought Skyfall was one of my favorites. I loved Octopussy, but I was a little kid, and the fact that you're on a boat with a bunch of hot women.
I mean, come on, come on.
View to a Kill was a little bit of a stretch because he's like making out with Tanya, whatever she died.
But my favorite Bond theme song of all time, just because I love Duran Duran.
It was awesome.
Yeah, it's a great song.
Actually, the back to back because the Living Daylights was a good theme song too.
Uh, the yeah, it was like, how did they? Who thought to resurrect Duran Duran for that? That was so good choice though. Uh, by
Uh,
that point, Duran Duran was like really not, and then they that like sprungboard their career and everything. They restarted their career in the '90s. I remember seeing them at a record signing once, like in the mid '90s.
that's funny. Now, all right, let's go to Star Wars. So you've seen all the Star Wars then, all the movies? Have you seen Last
Yeah,
Jedi? And this is
yeah.
going on Twitter today. Longo was going back and forth with a friend of mine about the Last Jedi, because Tom is adamant that it's a good movie. What are your thoughts on that, Pete?
All right. I only saw it once, and there were some things that really bothered me about it. Um, some things just didn't seem, it's like, well, okay, they're on the surface of a starship fighting. Are they in atmosphere? Are they out of atmosphere? No one's where. What's going on here? That kind of stuff bothers me. I'm just one of those people. It's like I see that and I'm like, this is gonna, I'm gonna be thinking about this. They weren't bad. It's just the, I guess the making like Luke into like some emo guy who's like an old emo guy who's like, he was in an emo band once and they were kind of popular locally. And but now he's still the same depressed emo guy, but he's like moved and he's like living, on his own island or something like that. I don't know. I just the it almost seemed like Luke's whole character in the later episode in 7, 8, and 9, in 8 and 9 really, are just like a meme. They're perfect for memes. They don't really. I don't even know if they needed to be there. It was more like it made more sense like at the what was it, the last episode of The Mandalorian for season one, for to bring Luke back as young Luke. That made more sense than it did for the for Last Jedi. I mean, I don't know. There were some things I liked about it. I mean, friggin' Carrie Fisher flying through space. And I mean, there are some things when I'm watching a show, watching a movie, that when it happens, it's just going to bother me. I mean, I'm just going to be there like, what are you doing? I you didn't need it didn't need to go here. It could have been. I don't know. I don't know. Now I'm thinking back. I'm thinking back along the storyline and everything, and I'm remembering a lot of it because I haven't watched these since they came out. But they're not as memorable to me as like the originals. And really, the originals 4, 5, and 6. The only reason they're memorable to me is because I was a kid and I was really into them. You know, here's a good here's a good Star Wars trivia. The first movie, and it's not really Star Wars trivia. Um, France didn't retire the guillotine until after the first Star Wars movie. They actually beheaded somebody with the guillotine after the first Star Wars movie came out. That's how that's how long France kept the Star Wars movie, and that's how early this first Star Wars movie was.
With the original Episode 4?
Yeah, yeah, 1977.
Wow.
I remember reading that bit of trivia a couple like 20 years ago. That's the kind of shit that I remember. You give me a piece of trivia like that, I'm going to hold on to it. I'll be talking about it on my deathbed. But you want to tell, if someone wants to bring up, oh, remember this scene in a movie where I'm just like, I'm like, they're like, oh no, it was the most important scene in the movie. I'm like, I don't know. Uh. I mean, I can tell you like every scene in Goodfellas or The Godfather Part Two, and a bunch of other movies. A movie like one of my favorite movies, HBO, a movie called Citizen X. I just reviewed that for Last Things Film Festival. Those movies I can tell you like every scene and like do dialogue from. But if it's really not a movie where I'm not like eager to watch it again after it ends. I'm not really going to remember a lot of it. And that 7, 8, and 9 just didn't do that for me.
Yeah, I don't even. The last one I saw, begrudgingly, I was up in Seattle Christmas time, whenever 19, right before COVID, and my sister wanted to go see it, and I saw it, and it's one of those movies I couldn't tell you anything about it. I don't remember. I don't remember anything. But mob movies, Goodfellas, Godfather, one and
Growing up,
two.
growing up in New York, if there was a movie set in New York, usually it was something that I could really grab onto. There's a mob movie with Mickey Rourke and Eric Roberts called The Pope of Greenwich Village.
Never saw it.
It's one of the greatest. I mean, I can still watch that movie, and it's just about the two losers who decide they're going to pull off they're going to get some old guy to help them rob a safe. And it turns out they're robbing the safe of the mob boss, the local mob boss. And then it's just what happens in their life and how they're trying to handle everything from there on out and deal with the fact that they know that the mob boss is going to figure out who did it and everything. And it's one of those movies that very low budget, but good dialogue, good characters. I mean, Mickey Rourke and Eric Roberts are great actors. Burt Young plays the mob boss from Rocky. He plays what's his name in Rocky?
Paulie. Paulie.
Paulie, yeah. And it's just good stuff. Good stuff, and Goodfellas I've seen 20 times. I've seen The Godfather and Godfather 2 probably 15, 20 times a piece. It's just one of those things I can put on and I know exactly what they're going to say and exactly what's going to happen, but still it keeps me intrigued and just watching it and how beautiful it is and how,
You don't mention the third one in there.
I mean, I don't hate it as much as most people do, but you just have to pretty much look at it as a standalone movie. I'll tell you, I've read what the original version of it was going to be, and it was 1,000 times worse than what it turned out to be. So thank God that Coppola didn't go with what it was originally supposed to be.
I read something about the third one. I don't know if this is true or not, but that the original idea was that the corporate America was going to take over the mob. And Duvall, if he'd have been in it, would have become the Godfather by the end because he was the attorney, he was the voice of reason. And if that would have, I don't know, I thought that could have been a cool idea because, like in Vegas, corporate America pushed the mob out, and they are the mob now.
Yeah, no, that would have been interesting. Duvall wasn't in it.
No, but if they would have had it, because they lowballed him, they lowballed him.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean Andy Garcia. Andy Garcia is not a bad actor. It wasn't a good role for him. So
and he's hooking up with his
Andy
cousin.
Garcia,
He's hooking up with his cousin, which
well, and also they force Sofia Coppola on you, who apparently turns out to be a really decent director of movies, but I mean, she's not a terrible actress in the movie. So you just have this nepotism there, where unlike where the first movies where they really, really went to like the first Godfather, there are there's a great there are great outtakes. I have the whole full set on Blu-ray, and of watching Robert De Niro go for the role of Sonny, but he's so greasy where Sonny looks a little more business-like and everything and very Jewy, but because James Gunn, but I mean, they had De Niro looked greasy and everything, and he does the whole scene about, this isn't where you shoot them from a mile away. You got to get up on there. Yeah, you got to get up on them and boom, blow their brains all over your nice Ivy League suit. And he was so greasy and looked too much like a Goomba. And I guess that's where they held him out and let him play Vito in the second one.
Did you ever see? Have you seen the sequential order ones? Is that what you have?
Yeah, I've seen the sequential order one. I like watching it the way watch 1 into 2. Yeah.
Yeah, my dad had bought the VHS, again, in the 90s. He had bought the VHS where they were in sequential, just the first two. And what I thought was cool about it was, you had all the De Niro stuff first, but then they had all those scenes that were not in the original theatrical, where he kills a couple more people when he's in Italy. They blow
Mhm.
up the guy that killed Al Pacino's first wife in Italy. He's got the pizzeria. You can find it all on YouTube, but
Yeah.
they blow up the pizzeria. Blow up his car right in front of his pizzeria.
Yeah, I haven't seen the sequential one since the 90s when it came out, but I don't remember all those extra scenes. But like the God, I think two's better than one actually. Just if you try to take it as a standalone movie, two just there's more of, I guess there's more intrigue because you're learning what the family is and how the family operates in the first one, and then two, you get to see just how powerful they become. Senate hearings and everything like that. And then Hyman Roth, the Hyman Roth character, the Meyer Lansky character, is you know, when you realize that he's, and I swear Coppola did this on purpose, when you find out he's pulling all the strings and he's really in charge of pretty much everything. And then you go back when you look in mob history, you're like, well, that's pretty accurate for most of mob history. Yeah.
Well, and even there's so many great like classic scenes in that movie, in both of them. But I love when he brings Duvall in and Pacino's talking about taking him out, Hyman Roth out, and he said, I don't care. What is it? I don't feel like I need to wipe out everyone, just my enemies. And then he's like, if you're not
Yeah.
going to come along with me, you could take your wife and your mistress and move them all to Las Vegas. And he goes, Michael, why do you hurt me? I've always been loyal to you.
Yeah. Well, and then in the second one, you find out how much he thinks of Tom when he makes him Don when he goes away. And he said, well, well, Vito says in the beginning, he says, I didn't think you were a bad consigliere. I just thought that Sonny was a bad Don. So Tom wasn't when he says you're not a wartime consigliere. I think that was to hurt him because I think Tom was what you saw in the second one that Tom knew what to do when the time came. So yeah, I think that was more of an insult than anything else.
Well, and how about when he's sitting there with him after the attempted assassination and he said, Fredo, he's got a big heart, but he's weak and he's stupid. He can't be candid with anybody. And he said it about his own brother.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have to be able to balance business and family if business is if family is your business. So the I mean, I guess the one thing that really soured a lot of people to part two was at the ending when Fredo has to go. And Fredo, and it wasn't, a lot of people ask, well, why did he do that? It was less about justice and more about, I need my enemies to see that I would do that.
And then he hugs him at his mother's funeral because remember it was, I don't want anything to happen to him while my
Yeah.
mother's still alive. And he looks right up
Yeah.
at Al or Rocco and is like,
Yeah.
this means nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's rough. I mean, that's a great thing about those movies is you're really getting caught up into like the intrigue of what becomes a political family. A family with more power than a lot of when when Vito was alive, they probably had as much power as because it's before the war, it's pre-war consensus. They had a lot of power, and then after the war, basically the government becomes much more powerful and takes on much more. Basically starts to crack down on anyone who could absolutely control their power or go into business with them, and that's what Senator what was it Senator Leary, is that from part two?
Yeah, where Pacino
Ah,
says to him, he says, you can have my answer now if you like. Even the fee, which I appreciate if you put up personally, and how they set him up at the
yeah,
brothel,
yeah,
which was,
yeah, insane. Yeah, I mean another thing where you're just like, did they really do that? Um, yeah, so you're that's the I guess that's one of the great things I love about those movies is just that there's so much power. You can really see how power works and how power is top down. where there's one or two people, one person's making the decision, maybe two, and they have their closest people to them, and that's just the way power works. And you, people don't want to apply that to real life, where that's pretty much the way. I mean, it's like the elite theorists say, 10 people can organize much better than 350 million people can. 350 million people can't organize. 10 people can. And if those 10 people know how to organize, they can control 350 million people.
Also, with that movie as well, how they couldn't let any stone unturned, and they had to. And Robert Duvall goes to the prison, or not the prison, the military base to talk Frank Pantangeline into killing himself. Which that was supposed to be played by Clemenza, right? Did you know that whole story behind that?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so because it makes sense, but that actor, whatever his name was, Clemenza from the first one, he was I believe he was the highest paid, maybe even more than Marlon Brando in the first one. And they wanted to bring him back for the second one, but his girlfriend or his wife said he has to be in control of all his dialogue. Well, the first one did so well that they didn't need to pay him. So they just scratched it and brought in that other guy. But Duvall going there to talk him into suicide, the way Adolf Hitler did, I mean, that was powerful stuff.
Well, and it's very interesting too because they even mention the Roman legions, how that if they made an attempt on the if they made an attempt on the king on Caesar or whoever was in charge, they had to take their own life. And that's also, not for a gigantic tangent, but people are, oh, why did Adolf Hitler take his own life? Because that's what Prussian leaders did when they lost. When they lost, they took their own lives. He was following the Prussian tradition. Yeah, everybody's like, oh, that's no, that's that's what they did. He was a Prussian. Prussia didn't end until 1945.
And then the very end of that film, they do the flashback, which they had shot that I think it was a cut scene from the first one, but I love it because you see that he's sitting at the table by himself, and then he's sitting in that park by himself. He couldn't keep his family together the way Marlon Brando could keep it together, but he couldn't.
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah, yeah, and they actually in part three they do that too. It ends with him completely alone and his family completely apart, and then I think he's in a wheelchair. He's in like a wheelchair, and he falls out of the wheelchair, and that he's died. Yeah. So
I want to talk about Goodfellas, but one thing I always wondered about Godfather, because Talia Shire, I mean, if you think about her, who's Francis Ford Coppola's sister, I mean, some of the greatest, my all-time favorite movies she was in, Rocky. I mean, most of the Rocky movies, and Godfather. I wonder if Stallone cast her, knowing that maybe he could get the financing if he had Francis Ford Coppola's sister in the first film, because he had a hard time selling it.
well, yeah, I mean, well, from what I understand, even though she was cast in it, he never got financing. He had to do it all himself, and that's why he became so rich. Is because he did it all himself. It's like Mel Gibson. I mean, Mel Gibson became a billionaire because he put out passion himself. Talk about fuck you money. You put out passion. I mean, that thing. I knew people who were going. I've never seen the movie.
Let me tell you how it ends.
I'm pretty sure I know. And it's not because, and it's not because. I mean, obviously I'm a Christian, but I, I don't want to see that. I've read. I can read it. I don't want to see it.
You know how this movie ends without having to see it.
Yeah. I don't need to see the thrashing. But yeah, I mean, he made Rocky with his own money. He was offered 200,000 for the script. He said at one time he was so broke, and he was offered like 100,000 for the script, and he's like, this will solve all of my problems, but no, I believe way too much in this and everything. So he is smart, but yeah, it was. But Talia Shire does a really good job, and yeah, as an actress, she plays one role. Because I mean, both of those roles were very similar. Once she got, once she broke out of her shell, she was just basically, what's her name? Uh, what's her name is Corleone.
Oh, Connie.
Connie, yeah, yeah. Then once she broke out of the shell, she was just basically Connie. So, but
She was also in a, I think she financed it or produced it. It was a movie called Rad. It was a BMX movie, and she played the mother. I think that's the only other thing I ever saw her in outside of Rocky or Godfather.
oh, that's funny.
Yeah, it was like
I
an
never heard
'80s
that.
BMX, yeah, stupid movie. But yeah, Stallone was one of those people, man. Like he's one of my favorite actors, and like Rocky's one of my all-time. You know, Tom and I were talking about that Nighthawks and Cobra and
Night
Cliffhanger and
Hawks is amazing because Night Hawks also has Rutger Hauer.
awesome.
Yeah, yeah, amazing. Yeah.
I feel like I heard Stallone say in an interview he wishes he would have done a sequel to Nighthawks because him and Billy D. Williams were so they had such good flow.
There was a chemistry there that was actually pretty good. Yeah, no, I mean Stallone did some did some other stuff. I mean, the Rocky movies were good. The Rambo movies were what they were, and everything. But there were other things. Lockup was pretty
I
decent
like that
too.
movie.
Was it Copland?
That was good.
Yeah. Yeah, that wasn't a horrible movie. It wasn't as bad as like the critics made it out to be. It was one of those movies I'm like, all right, the critics are panning it. It's probably good. And I watched it, I'm like, this isn't horrible. This isn't
What did you like better, Stallone or Schwarzenegger, growing up?
bad. Probably Stallone, just because he was more of like a New Yorker, more of like an East Coast guy and everything, and Schwarzenegger just mumble mouth and everything. Commando was just great. I mean, it's just one of those. I mean, it's maybe one of the most classic action movies of all time. It's so ridiculous. I mean, and it was the first movie that, growing up in New York, I wasn't around guns a lot, but it was one of the first movies where I was like, okay, how is that rifle just like firing for like a minute straight? Don't they have to do magazine changes or anything? It was like that's when I realized that's when I couldn't watch a movie anymore unless without watching the guns went into God mode, which meant like they had all of a sudden they had 1,000 rounds to shoot. It's like how did this work?
I love Commando, man. I love Conan the Barbarian though.
But I mean, if dudes can play all they want, if they've ever watched Kindergarten Cop, they've laughed their ass off. That's a funny
That's a
movie.
great movie. Twins
He's
was good too.
he's really funny in it. Which one? Twins? Oh
Yeah,
yeah, that's ridiculous. Yeah, but I mean Schwarzenegger did True Lies.
loved it.
True Lies is a great movie.
Loved it.
Yeah,
How about
it's a great
Predator?
movie. I mean, and a Harrier jump jet. I mean, what movie did better showcase the Harrier jump jet better? Predator. Oh yeah. I mean, obviously, the. I mean, he was the best in it. Some of the side characters were really cringe. I'm sorry, they were cringy as hell.
I love how they went in to take out the whatever the unit, and Jesse Ventura's got the minigun. All these muscle heads, right? They're all geared up and going in. They just kill everybody.
It's so ridiculous.
But you know what though? The effects still hold up. The Predator
Yeah.
effects still hold up
Oh yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I actually liked Predators too. Predators, the one that came out like 10 years ago. That one was pretty. That was pretty good. When they all got dropped on another planet,
I don't
they
know if I
realized they're
saw
on
that
another
one.
planet. You remember that one?
Uh-uh.
That one had like what's his name in it? I can't remember his name. But yeah, that was it. That one wasn't bad. AVP, Alien versus Predator.
That was good.
Great movie. That's
Yeah.
one of my favorite. I've seen that movie like 10 times. I mean, there's so much in that one too. So
I
and the second one wasn't that
It
bad.
was okay. It was okay. It was,
Yeah.
I thought the Predator would. I thought he'd fare better against the aliens, but the aliens really did kick the shit out of them in the first one.
If you could, if like you can spit acid or like your blood is acid, predators are gonna have a problem.
All right, so Scorsese, man, what is your Goodfellas is my favorite Scorsese movie. Now, in fairness,
Yeah.
I've never seen Raging Bull,
I've seen Raging Bull multiple times.
and I hear it's okay.
It's a great movie. I mean, he's a piece of he was a piece of shit, and that's the hardest part of the whole thing is just dealing because he's just such a terrible person. But it's shot really well, a good dialogue, and black and white. Black and white helped a lot, I think.
So, what's your favorite Scorsese?
Um, I mean, Goodfellas is you know, depending on the day, either Godfather. I'll tell you, Godfather, Goodfellas is my favorite movie. Um, Goodfellas. I remember back in the day when it was on like HBO, and it would come on at like 11 o'clock at night, and I had to be to work. I knew I had to wake up at like 5 o'clock in the morning to go to work, and I would hear that first line. Ever since I was a kid, all I want to be again. And I was like, all right, shit, I'm gonna be here till 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. Damn it. All right, well, I mean, everything about that movie, it did a really it did a good job of showing, from what I understand. I mean, I read the book too. I read the book Wise Guy what was his name? Nicholas Pileggi. From what I understand, it did a really good job of showing just how those guys would go out and make money, and then how they'd have to kick back, and that they really did try their best to not get innocent people hurt or involved. It was just the people that they needed to in order to in order to get business done. But the soundtrack, the the casting was fantastic too. I mean, I don't know that, I mean, has Ray Liotta ever done another role that he was that good in?
Not like no, not to that level. I liked him in Blow, but he was only
No.
supporting in that.
Yeah.
There's so many. I mean, you look at Goodfellas, man. There's so many. The whole movie is just one big classic moment. Like I liked
Well,
Casino, and
and
Casino had some good moments in it, but the
yeah.
cohesiveness of Goodfellas was just
Well, Casino also was, there were so many parts in that were just so dehumanizing that were really depressing. Um, but yeah, I mean, Goodfellas, you had, first of all, the cast. Second of all, they cast real mobsters in it. And actually, Godfather, there were actually real mobsters in that too. You actually see pictures of the cast going and visiting certain guys and took pictures with them and everything, so just so they could get the idea of how to act. But yeah, I mean, when you look at Goodfellas, the casting, the music, the story, and realizing that a lot of that story is true. Now, in the book, they concentrate a whole lot more on something that is just told in passing. Talk about the point shaving scandal at Boston College. The book is majority about that. And they talk about it. Morty mentions it right before they put the ice pick in the back of his head. But the for a lot of the intrigues, like the Lufthansa heist and everything, I mean those things happened. Those things were real, and they pulled those off without like firing a shot. So yeah, there's a lot in there. There's also a lot of New York history, a lot of neighborhood history. You see how a lot of neighborhoods work, but you really do see how the mob work. There's like the Paulie character, Sorvino. Um, he his like in the book he talks about how when credit cards came out, they were the first ones to figure out how to counterfeit credit cards, and they would go out, they would call them I forget what they call them. They call them like chiclets or something like that. They would go out and like have run up $300 bills in restaurants in the 60s, in the late 60s, where it's like, how do you run up a $300 bill in the late 60s in a restaurant? And I remember him being quoted in the book as saying, the meal always tasted the best when we didn't pay for it. So yeah, after I saw the movie, I had to go get the book and read the book. I think I read the book like in one day or something like that. And it was just, the thing about The Godfather is when you look at that, it's so insular, it's so nepotistic that you know that you can never be a part of that world. But Goodfellas let you know that you didn't have to be Italian to be in the mob. You just had to be, so it could be like anyone. it actually opened the door where people could be like, I could actually be associated with these guys, even though I'd never be a made guy.
I like when Ray Liotta's young character comes home and his father busts him, and because he wasn't going to school and he's beating him, and the best was him narrating the whole movie, and he goes, the way I look at it, everybody takes a beating once in a while. That was it.
I mean, so true, so true. How are you going to get through life and be successful without taking a beating every once in a while? It just happens.
Where does The
And
Irishman stand up for you on that all that stuff?
I refuse to watch it.
Oh, you haven't seen it?
I don't want to be disappointed. Yeah, I don't want to be disappointed. I've heard too many people I know who I respect it. We agree on The Godfather and like on Goodfellas, and they're like, "Don't watch it." I'm like, okay.
Yeah, if I could share with you what I think, first of all, I only watch it once in the theater. I have a hard time getting through things that long if I don't see it in the theater because I just fall asleep or I'm looking at my phone, and when you're in a dark movie theater, you're not doing that stuff. I'll tell you, man, I think it's worth the watch, and I liked it better than Casino. I didn't like it as good as Goodfellas, but I didn't have expectations of that because Goodfellas is like Dark Knight. It's a perfect movie. It just comes along
Mm-hmm.
every so often. But what I thought was good about it was Pesci's character. For the first time, he was the mob boss, but he wasn't violent. He was, he did all of his actions very calmly. You didn't see him yell. You didn't see, and when Pacino, the first time you hear his voice, I remember saying to my friend, I go, man, we're never going to see all these guys on screen again. Like, never going to happen. So to me, I think it's worthwhile. You should watch it,
Mm.
in my opinion. And then they
Well, if
spend a
you,
lot of time in the post, after the fallout from Hoffa's death. And there was a good 45 minutes of it. And most I'd ever seen in a Scorsese film because it doesn't end well for these guys. It never does.
mm.
And life is
Yeah,
lonely, and life is your kids don't want anything to do with you. And I mean, it just, that's unfortunately, it's not a sexy world, sexy life.
yeah. No, I mean, Hoffa. That's another movie I haven't watched. My dad's side of the family is a Teamsters family,
Mm.
and yeah, it's I mean, I know a lot. I know a lot. Oh, they used to do a lot of stuff. Let's put it that way. I'm not going to use a judgment word just to get it so no one gets mad at me. Um, but yeah, I've never seen Hoffa either. What did you think of The Departed?
I liked it. One thing about Scorsese movies, they go on sometimes longer than they need to, and that's what like The Departed was. And I also feel like they were paying homage to Scorsese, like because he needed a best director, he deserved it for just Goodfellas alone. And I forgot what I think The English Patient is what won it that year. So they were paying respect to him by giving that. But I liked it. I mean, I thought it was good. I like Jack Nicholson. I like DiCaprio.
Yeah, I mean the Martin Sheen character was, I mean, the way he lose, dies is just insane. Um, the what about I mean, the character I loved the most whenever he was on the screen was the Mark Wahlberg.
He was great. Yeah, he's getting into fights with Matt Damon.
Yeah, just I mean, absolutely insane fights. And then of course, did you notice whenever anyone got shot in that movie, it was a headshot?
I guess I never realized it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, everything was a headshot, and they were brutal headshots. Even the last one, the one that Wahlberg's character delivers. I mean, that is just brutal. Yeah, that movie wasn't bad, but it was overly long, and there was some stuff there. They probably could have cut 20 minutes, 25 minutes out of that movie. But one movie I wrote here, and I'm going to have to go in a
Yeah.
couple of minutes. And this is, I just, when you were talking about Pacino and De Niro, one of my all-time favorite movies, another movie I've seen 20 times is Heat.
Love it.
I mean, it's a heist movie. I remember, people make fun of the comedian, the comedian Dane Cook. You remember him?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He had this joke about how, like, the reason people love the reason people like Heat is because every dude dreams of being a part of a heist. And it's true, right? I mean, you've thought about it, right?
Yeah, I was more into Boys in the Hood, man. Everybody wanted to be Ice Cube from Boys in the Hood. If you remember that movie.
But it's like I always thought. Well, and then Dane Cook finishes joke goes, every dude thinks about being a part of a heist and owning a monkey, which makes no sense. But I've actually thought about owning a monkey at times too, so I understood it. But Heat is just phenomenal. The the dialogue at the diner. I mean, some of the best dialogue. I mean, the dialogue isn't even that great. It's just how Michael Mann, how his music and how his scores just really intensify a moment. And I thought that was another great moment is at the moment at the ending where he sees her and he realizes he has to leave. And he's like, and then he remembers to John Voight's character, who's like, always be ready to go at a moment's notice and leave anyone behind. And there's just, I could talk about Heat forever. I mean, there's so much to that movie. The Wayne Grow, I mean, Thomas and I have talked about this so many times. How the Wayne Grow character, how you understand the Night of Long Knives because you don't leave people around who are who will damage things. They'll come back to bite you in the ass.
I like the very, very end when De Niro's shot. And at that point he's done, and he said, "I told you I'm never going back." And Pacino, holds his hand, and you see the camaraderie, so he doesn't have to die alone. And then the music with it's
Yeah.
Moby that they played at the very end of that. So it was such a great. I mean, putting Moby at the very end, it was like that was awesome.
There was I mean, there's an alternate ending where he gets away, but
Oh,
it
there
just
is.
doesn't work. Yeah. Yeah, there's an alternate ending where he gets away, but it just doesn't work. Yeah.
I gotta look that up on YouTube. I know you probably gotta go.
Yeah.
Anything you wanna you as we go into 25, man? What are you thinking?
I'm thinking everything's going to be a fight, but I think it's really interesting that so much of like politics in the world is done on Twitter now, where somebody can float something, somebody in power can float something, and people immediately dogpile on it. And then it's like, then Elon gets so beaten down that he's like, okay, let's do a poll. And and the people have spoken kind of thing, especially over the last couple of days where they're threatening this Pajit invasion of H1B workers and everything. I'm just looking forward to that, to seeing how that plays out, how all that plays out. I'm looking forward to seeing how people are going to, because they're not going to get the things that they want, that they thought they could get under Trump, that they're going to immediately turn on him and be like, oh, we should have voted, we should have, told you it'd have been better with Kamala because we'd be fighting. And be like, yeah, so you don't want Indians in the country, so vote for an Indian. Okay, that's good. Um, I look forward to it because when it comes down to it, people need to remember this. It's not January 21st. And we're not going to know whether any of this stuff is done, what's going to be done until January 21st. Another thing that I find very interesting is that everybody, everybody is talking like Trump's already president. Everybody assumes he's already president. I actually saw one like Democrat go, well, why, someone was saying something. Someone's like, well, why doesn't Trump do something about that? I'm like, he's not fucking president, dummy. Like everyone assumes he's already president. Why? Because Joe Biden's probably dead somewhere, and Kamala Harris is hiding. Yeah, I mean, it's weird times, and I think anybody who thinks right now that they know what's going to happen is just they're gonna be as wrong as I will be about predictions I've made. So I think we're all gonna be wrong.
One thing I'll add is, whatever is going to happen, it provides a lot of opportunities for what I'm doing, for what you're doing. I wish none of it was happening and we lived in just a normal world where, all this fuckery wasn't occurring, but it is what it is. And for this kind of stuff, there's just going to be a lot of conversations to be had. There's going to be a lot of analysis, a lot of fun with guessing where things may or may not go. And, you said it, I think last time we spoke, like you're just gearing up for what's going to be thrown at us. And, I'm glad that you come on here regularly and, we can talk about things and I appreciate you doing this today. Where can people find you?
Well, for right now, I don't have a hockey podcast, which is what I would do if the world was the place that I'd want it to be. Quiñones show, all podcatchers, PeteSubstack.com, and the Old Glory Club. We stream every Thursday night at 8 o'clock Eastern on our YouTube channel, and Michael has been a guest recently.
Yeah, and thank you for letting me come on. And I'll put all the descriptions for people so they can click on all Pete's work. And Happy New Year! I look forward to more conversations ahead.
Happy New Year, brother. Take care.
Mic drop.